Next on Currents News, President Trump is shaking up his cabinet with new choices for key posts, and more change could be on the way. The latest from the Capitol is next. An anti-Christmas story from the American heartland. A school principal wants to wipe out all references to Christ's birth. 77 years after Pearl Harbor, a look back with two Brooklyn heroes. Plus, the Brooklyn Diocese getting into the Christmas spirit at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph. The news starts right now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. Big developments tonight in Washington. President Trump is nominating a new attorney general and ambassador to the United Nations, while word is the White House chief of staff could resign. Omar Jimenez has the latest from Washington.
An administration shuffle underway in Washington.
I've seen very good things about him.
President Trump announcing his selection of Bill Barr to succeed Jeff Sessions as the nation's top lawyer.
He was my first choice from day one, respected by Republicans and respected by Democrats.
If confirmed, the former Attorney General under George H.W. Bush will return to his post at the Department of Justice and will be responsible for overseeing the Mueller investigation, an investigation adding to the tensions in the White House as key new details of the probe are expected to be revealed in a pair of court filings due today in the cases against former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort and former Trump attorney Michael Cohen. The president blasting the investigation in a new series of tweets, repeatedly referring to the probe as a witch hunt. But he remained mum on the subject when speaking with reporters Friday morning, instead shifting gears to declare his pick of Heather Nauert to replace Nikki Haley as UN ambassador.
She's very talented, very smart, very quick, and I think she's going to be respected by all.
Nauert, the former Fox News host and current State Department spokesperson, could face an uphill battle in her confirmation, as critics say she lacks diplomatic experience. And the administration's revolving door may not stop there. Chief of Staff John Kelly is expected to resign his position in the coming days following weeks of discord with the president. In Washington, Omar Jimenez, Currents News.
Former FBI Director James Comey being grilled for hours on Capitol Hill behind closed doors. The House Judiciary Committee demanding his appearance to go over Bureau investigations of Hillary Clinton's emails and Russian election interference. A full transcript of the session will be made public soon. The United States is taking action tonight to extradite an American priest arrested in the Philippines on sexual abuse allegations. 77-year-old Kenneth Hendricks is from Cincinnati, but was ordained in the Asian country after arriving there in the 1960s. He's denied the allegations. U.S. Attorney Benjamin Glassman is leading the extradition effort.
We are now working with the immigration and law enforcement authorities in the Philippines to determine whether and when and the best way for us to get him to the Southern District of Ohio in order to answer the charges.
If Father Hendricks is convicted, he would face up to 30 years in federal prison. Tonight, a new investigation into the troubled church in Chile. The Vatican is launching a probe after some Chilean nuns alleged sexual abuse at the hands of priests. The country's church has been rocked by a scandal involving mistreatment of children. All of Chile's bishops have written resignation letters because of that crisis. Some have been accepted. Also tonight, an elementary school principal's anti-Christmas sentiment is sparking outrage and concern in Nebraska and gaining national attention. The principal sent a blunt memo to teachers, essentially banning anything related to the religious holiday.
Frankly, it was the most outrageous memo we've ever seen on Christmas.
A two-page memo sent to teachers and staff at Manchester Elementary. Principal Jennifer Sinclair lays out her list, highlighting, quote, not acceptable practices during the holiday season. It's all about banning Christmas in the classroom, including candy canes because they symbolize a J for Jesus. No Santas or Christmas trees allowed either. On the acceptable items list, snowmen, penguins, and holidays around the world. In her memo, Sinclair calls the list inclusive and culturally sensitive to all students. She signs it, quote, the unintentional Grinch who stole Christmas from Manchester. Matt Staver is the founder of Liberty Council, an organization dedicated to advancing religious freedom.
But for the fact that some school staff got us involved, she would have been the Grinch in Manchester and would have sent a very terrible message to the school district.
Staver says the list violates the school district's policy and First Amendment laws. The council sent a letter to administrators last Friday.
We were prepared, had the school not responded appropriately, to file suit this week.
The Elkhorn School District released a statement saying administration promptly addressed the issue and the memo does not reflect the policy of Elkhorn Public Schools. A district spokesperson says the school is receiving a high volume of phone calls from concerned parents and an officer will be present at school in the coming days. The district has placed Sinclair on leave. Also tonight, December 7th, 1941, a date of infamy. Today marks the 77th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor surprise attack when the Japanese struck the U.S. naval base in Hawaii. Over 2,000 Americans lost their lives and many U.S. planes and battleships were destroyed, marking the beginning of World War II. As per doctor's orders, no one who survived the bombing of the U.S. Arizona was permitted to travel to Hawaii this year to commemorate the attack on Pearl Harbor. It's the very first time no survivors were present for the moment of silence. In 2016, Tim Hoffman interviewed two men from Brooklyn and Queens who never did forget what they witnessed that day in paradise. They took their memories to the grave, forever saying they were the lucky ones. Here is what could be their very last interview about the date that lives in infamy.
Clark Simmons was there as the bombs fell. The lifelong Brooklynite remembers when he enlisted in the Navy.
They had no position for a black man at that time. And all I'm going to do was go there and be a porter, shine shoes, make beds, serve meals to the officers.
And that's what he did until Mr. Simmons found himself working on the USS Utah. The battleship was docked for the December 6th weekend in Pearl Harbor, giving him the chance to relax in Honolulu before heading home on Monday. But while gazing out his window, known to the seamen as a port, Mr. Simmons describes what he witnessed on that fateful Sunday, December 7th.
Twin rainbows was coming over the mountain. And then meanwhile, these fighter planes and dive bombers were making a run on the ships.
The Utah was struck by torpedoes, quickly sinking, killing nearly 60 sailors. But Mr. Simmons escaped, jumping into the harbor, grasping a nearby buoy for dear life.
As they were machine gunning us in the water and dropping bombs on the ship.
19 years old at the time, he made it to shore, sustaining injuries to his shoulders, left leg, and head, leaving him legally blind. During the whole time, the Christian man had his faith.
I thought of how lucky I was, and I remember just like it was yesterday. Thank God.
Aaron Chabin also has vivid memories of December 7th. The 93-year-old Bayside, Queens resident was only 10 months into his deployment as an Army private in Honolulu. Just days before the deadly attacks, he says his bunkmate noticed suspicious activity.
The guy on radar reported to his commanding officer, and from what we heard, they said, "Go back to sleep. You're having pipe dreams."
What was assumed to be a dream became a horrific reality. 18 years old at the time, Mr. Chabin says he was reading a newspaper at the Schofield Barracks when the Japanese struck.
We heard an explosion. Someone ran out and we heard a yelling, "It's the Japs." And someone else yelled, "You're crazy."
A date which will live in infamy.
Mr. Chabin would stay in the area helping as chief communications operator. Like Clark Simmons, Mr. Chabin served the country until the end of World War II in 1945. Many call these men heroes, but he says it was just another day on the job.
Everything was automatic. You didn't stop to think of what to do. You just did it.
Both Clark Simmons and Aaron Chabin passed away less than a year after we first aired this interview. We are forever thankful for their sacrifice and their service. There's a lot more news headed your way. Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio goes into the deep about his important regional meetings with the lay faithful of the Diocese of Brooklyn and Queens. And it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas at St. Peter's Square. The Vatican Christmas tree is lit. And keeping Christ in Christmas by giving back. How one organization is working to give kids around the world a very Merry Christmas. And do you have a story idea, something happening in your parish we should know about? We want to hear from you. Keep this email handy, newstips@desalesmedia.org. We'll be right back. In tonight's Into the Deep segment, Bishop DiMarzio is here to talk about the recent listening sessions he held with the faithful about the sexual abuse crisis. 4 meetings were held at 4 parishes in the diocese, and the sessions will be highlighted in a new informational video. Ed Wilkinson is with the bishop, and he has more. Hi, Ed.
Thanks, Liz. Bishop DiMarzio is with us today, and he's going to talk about some recent listening sessions that he held around the diocese. And Bishop, the topic was sexual abuse. You wanted to get out into the parishes and talk with people and priests about this. What did you hope to gain by this? What was the purpose of these meetings?
Well, it was educational, to really tell our story, that so people could understand and give them a chance to answer questions. Ask the questions and answer the questions. It gives me a better idea about what people know, what people don't know. And again, this was about 1,200 people at the 4 sessions. And now we're going to produce a video that can go to all the parishes, so everybody have an advantage of the little teaching I did on the John Jay study about the history of this, but also the questions, the best questions and answers that we had. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to also produce a written form, all the questions, so everybody will see all the questions and the answers.
Mm-hmm. Do you think people have a grasp of what's going on, or do you think they don't understand all of the minutiae of what's going on here in the diocese?
There's a lot of things that are not understood. In general, they understand that the press again puts their own spin on things, but I think after one of those sessions, people come away, I think, satisfied, and we didn't hear any dissatisfaction. People felt, yes, I got answers to my questions, and it was basically at least clearing the deck of any misinformation. So the more information we give, the better, but at least the misinformation was dispelled.
What was it mostly that you were trying to convey to them that you thought they probably were not aware of?
Well, that it was an epidemic, that it did have a beginning, a high point, and an end, and any aberrations that we see in the time coming really are just aberrations. You can't ever extinguish people doing things that are wrong. But we've contained it to as large extent as possible.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the questions that came up?
Well, that's my memory now. That people did not understand what we were doing about the safe environment, about how we're training the children. And these are the reasons why this is not happening anymore, because it isn't a question of people not reporting things for a long time. People say, oh, it's not true because it's still the same, but people are not reporting. They didn't report for a long time. The atmosphere has changed. The Me Too time is here. Mm-hmm. People are not so reticent anymore. We found that in 2002 when we made a public statement. Many more people came in. Now with the program of reconciliation, a lot more people came in. People know they can come to the church and make their claim. So I think that's not a good argument to say this is still continuing, but because we're not getting any reports that, as far as we know, that this is what we know. Mm-hmm. So that was a main thing. That was a question people had. That was because the Pennsylvania study seemed to indicate that this was an ongoing thing. They didn't, and the way the press played it, it seemed like it never had ended. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is, this was historical.
And there are some settlements being made through the Reconciliation Board. Did people ask where that money is coming from?
Oh, yes, they did. And we did answer them that we had to mortgage property, we had to sell some property. We used most of the savings that we have as a diocese, and that's where we're at. We think we'll be able to make it with what we have. If not, we're going to have to ask the parishes to contribute because, again, they're responsible just as much as the diocese, legally at least, for what happened.
Mm-hmm. Did you sense any anger or hostility in the questions that were asked?
Just a few, maybe. People were angry. They felt that we weren't telling the truth in certain areas in the past. I think once people had the airing that they needed, it seemed people went away satisfied that we were telling the truth and that we were as honest as we could be.
What's the next step? You said there's a video coming.
Well, the video's coming. Go to the parishes. We'll have to give a kind of a guide to the pastors how to use it. Hopefully we could get sessions going where people will have an opportunity to ask the questions they need to know.
Great. Thanks, Bishop.
Okay.
Liz, back to you. That's the latest on the sex abuse crisis, and there'll be more information available in the parishes as we go along. So, Liz.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Bishop DiMarzio, for that important information. Tomorrow is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, a holy day of obligation. Catholics are required to attend Mass in honor of the Blessed Virgin, and the U.S. bishops are telling the faithful that Saturday's Vigil liturgy for Sunday does not count as a 2-for-1 Mass for both days. Meantime, at the Vatican, the Christmas season is in full swing. A new festive display is now outdoors in St. Peter's Square. Melissa Butts tells us more about it.
Christmas has officially begun here in St. Peter's Square, as just a few seconds ago, this 70-foot-high Christmas tree was officially lit for all to see.
Puoi accendere l'albero di Natale.
It was lit by children before the Christmas celebration was accompanied by traditional music and dancing. This year's 4.5-ton spruce tree is from the Diocese of Concordia Perdone. The energy-efficient lights cloaking it were chosen to limit the negative impact on the environment. This is one of Pope Francis's great concerns. Excitement was at an all-time high in the square, with many traveling to Rome to experience the magic of the Christmas season.
I think it's absolutely amazing. Christmas is my favorite time of year, so just being able to be in the Vatican and Rome for this time of year and seeing all the Christmas lights and the Christmas tree being lit is amazing.
Yeah, it was actually really awesome to see, and I'm really glad that I was actually here for it because I didn't know it was happening tonight, but I just strolled by.
It's such a wonderful time of the year. I mean, being here, seeing the tree, being in such a historical and religious place is just a magical experience.
There's also a historic first in St. Peter's Square. A 720-ton pile of sand has been transformed into this intricate nativity scene. The sand comes from the Italian city of Jesolo near Venice and takes up 270 square feet. It's a tradition of the Dolomites, with the sand coming from inland areas instead of typical beach sand. It proved to be quite the crowd pleaser.
Well, it's beautiful. It's a very nice piece of art. And there are many people here coming to see it because it's so outstanding.
It will remain covered to shelter it from rain or wind that could destroy it, and the sand brought to the Vatican will return to Jesolo once it's no longer in use. This special view with the lit tree and nativity scene will be on display until January 13, 2019, the day of the baptism of the Lord. At the Vatican, Melissa Butts, Currents News. Back to you in New York, Liz.
Thank you, Melissa. Still to come on Currents News, giving the gift of joy this holiday season. I'll talk with the woman behind a special project. Gloria. And spreading that Christmas spirit, a star-studded stage at Brooklyn's Co-Cathedral to ring in the reason for the season. We'll be right back. What better way to keep Christ in Christmas this season than to give back? That's the mission of Box of Joy, to ensure that children in need experience the joy of the holidays. Sandy Pino is the director of the Parish and Community Services Department at Cross Catholic Outreach, the ministry who provides the special boxes we're going to talk about now. She joins us. Sandy, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Well, you know, my interest is piqued, and so is my curiosity. What will kids find in a box of joy?
The beautiful thing about the boxes of joy is they're each unique because they're packed by more than 80,000 faithful Catholics across the country, and beautiful gift ideas inside, like toys, school supplies, hygiene items, apparel like flip-flops and t-shirts, and hygiene items, accessories like hairbrushes and toothbrushes and hair bows, little baby dolls, yo-yos, balls, everything that would delight a child who really has never received a Christmas gift, most likely.
Sandy, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, Guatemala, El Salvador, these countries are facing so many great challenges and are obviously in need of charitable giving. You've chosen those countries. How did you decide which countries you want to serve with the boxes?
Well, those are some of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere. They are countries where we are already providing support for urgent needs like housing, education, medical, water, orphan support. So we have faithful Catholic partners who engage in support for the poor. And we wanted to find a ministry that would bless the children who live such really difficult lives. And what better way than to bring them a Christmas gift representing the birth of our Jesus and the love of Christ as well.
And this is a comprehensive team effort. You have over 470 parishes across almost every single state, 126 drop-off centers. How do you coordinate such a huge effort?
Well, we have a great team at Cross Catholic Outreach, and we have great donors, great Catholic schools, Catholic parishes, the Knights of Columbus, the National Catholic Council of Women. All of these groups, more than 600 groups, are mobilizing their Catholic communities to provide this joy to children. And it is blessing parties on both sides. It's a blessing to pack the boxes with these beautiful gifts. We include a rosary and the story of Jesus in every single box. So we are evangelizing our Catholic faith through this beautiful ministry for children. And it is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Having said that, Sandy, share the blessing. I'm sure our viewers want to know, is there a way to participate for us here locally?
There is a way to participate locally. Again, we're in 48 states. And so if you go to our website, boxofjoy.org, you'll see a map of all the participating drop-off centers, these people who have just volunteered to serve in an even deeper way than packing the boxes. They're collecting boxes from the communities as well.
Sandy, you set a goal each year to reach a certain amount of kids. What's the 2018 mark?
The 2018 mark was to bless 70,000 children. We're well over 80,000 children to be blessed this year. And I know through the Create a Box option, which is also on the website, and the people who, when shopping for Christmas gifts, are going to pack boxes for the children as well. I can't wait to see what God is going to do to just blow that goal right out of the water and bless so many children.
Oh, Sandy, I think that is the perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much for the work that you do and for joining me for this interview. I really appreciate it. It was great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you, and God bless you at Christmas and always. And we so appreciate our faithful Catholics across the country who have blessed children with the box of joy.
And Christ and Christmas combined last night at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph's. That is Emmy Award-winning journalist Kelly Wright, who headlined the celebration of the reason for the season. Also singing some Christmas carols, 14-year-old opera singer, Brooklynite Diana Marie Panetto, and host of Net TV's Emmy Award-winning series City of Churches, Anthony Mangano, inspired a sea of swaying red and green candles with his rendition of Walking in a Winter Wonderland. And Anthony's date for the evening, as well as the show's MC, was me. And it was a true honor to lead people from the Diocese of Brooklyn in some much-needed Christmas cheer. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you so much for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. I hope to see you again next time.